Okay, you can pause the video if you want to be able to reread the problem, but I'm assuming you've already read it, so I'm going to move forward. But I have to say, I'm sorry that the audio on this is really bad, but I did a video already, and it ended up failing. The audio wasn't recording at all, so I guess my mics aren't working, or I can't get them to mic, so you're going to hear just what you're getting this out of this. Not very good. All right, so to understand the problem, you have to recognize that these scores right here are basically already percentages. You know, when it says 89, it's probably meaning that it was many homeworks and 89% is the average. Same thing with a quiz. There were probably several quizzes and 77 was the percent was the average, and so on. So then they use these weights of those scores. And when you see 0.5, you can think of it as 0.05. So in other words, 5%, but written in standard form. Similarly here, you can think of this as 3/10 or 2/10 or 1/10. You know, 10% is the same thing as 1/10, just like similarly 35% is the same thing as 35/100ths in standard form. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the directions you wrote down actually down here in the corner. Thank you for writing them. So there's your definition of a weighted mean. You first multiply and get a score. This this is the first product, and that would be like x sub 1 times w sub 1. Then you're going to do the same for the next, same for the next, and so on, right? I'll just leave those untouched. It's going to happen for the rest. Each time you get those, it's going to give you a new score, a new product. I'll call this x sub 2 times w sub 2 for the second item. And then you're going to add them all up. So w sub n plus, I'm sorry, to be consistent, x sub n times w sub n. That's what this symbol right here means. It means you're going to take the summation, the sum of all those. So you're going to add them up, boom, boom, so on. And the sum that they got was 87.75. Now, since we're supposed to also divide by the sum of the weights, I started to say sum of the frequencies because all this can be done with frequency distributions also. Then you need to take all these weights and add them up. But if you add them up, 0.5, 0.3, 0.2, you get 100%. And 100% is the same thing as the number 1. So divide by 1 and you haven't changed anything. You can now call this 87.75%. So hopefully that explains what's being done here in the table. Now the actual question is, what would be the weighted mean, and essentially how would it change if instead of getting a 92 on the final, you scored an 86. So 92 is gone, but the weight doesn't change. Our weighted score will change, and let's see how. If we made that an 86 and you multiplied, you would get over here, instead of a 32.2, you'd get a 30.1. So to find the difference, I'm gonna work kind of a little bit backward from the bottom up at least. I know that the original sum was 87.75, and then by putting in the 86 for the final exam score, my score for the my weighted score turned out to be 30.1 points. The difference of those are 1.1 points. I'm sorry, 2.1 points, 2 and 1/10. So if I subtract that difference, which is 5, 6, 5, 8, 85.65% would be my new weighted mean. That's the answer that they're looking for when they say, what's the new weighted mean? In fact, I'm kind of a little misleading by putting this highlight over there, so I'll remove the highlight. All right, that's done. You can stop there. That's an explanation of what this formula was that you had stated on this side. It's first take each product of the score and the percentage, and then add them all up, and then divide that by the sum of all those weights. And more often than not, that's going to be 100, especially as we start moving into probability distributions. All right, so on the calculator, though, speaking of probability distributions, before you go into probability distributions, you're going to have the frequency distributions to warm you up. And in frequency distribution, you get nearly the same structure here, except for the names are different. Instead of having single scores, since those frequency distributions have class intervals, you can average the class intervals, and that's called the midpoint of the interval. So there'll be the class midpoints that will be listed on the left here. And then instead of percentage of final grade, you'll have the frequencies that of data that occur in those midpoints, or in those those intervals. So you'll have frequencies over here on the right. So again, midpoints and frequencies, but then everything else is going to behave the same. So let me go ahead and show you. So I hit stat and I hit edit. I can hit press the number one on the calculator, or I can just hit the enter button. I've pre-populated this to have my scores in list 1 and my final percentages in list 2 for the categories, all except for 1. So I've left 92 out on purpose. I'll go ahead and put 92. That's the one that we're looking for the change. And let me show you quickly how to find the weighted mean without having to do what I did and actually get all the scores and then add them up. I guess I didn't have to get the scores, they were already listed, but I do list 1. I'm sorry, there's a really important thing before that. I hit stat, go over to calculate by hitting an arrow. You can go all the way around if you miss it. Calculate, and then I'm going to choose the one variable statistics. What are they? They were list 1, comma list 2, and then I hit enter. And right there is the mean, x bar, from the weights being used. If I want to find out what it would be instead if it was not a 92 but an 86, it's as easy as going right back to the list, stat, okay, choose edit, change the score, go back to the main screen, stat, calculate, first variable statistics or summary statistics, list 1 and list 2. Now we need to do list 1 and list 2 because it'll know then to multiply them together in that order to get the results over here, and then to divide by the sum of that. Anyway, hit enter, and then it should be an 85.65 weighted mean, and that's exactly what I got. So I hope this helps. I actually want to draw your attention to this corner icon. With that, you can open other tools, not necessarily an electronic version of the calculator, but you can open up StatCrunch and Excel, or at least copy and paste into Excel. So please let me know, and I can help you learn those other technologies.